This is section 1.8, Excel problem number 2. So let's talk through this problem. It says first we want to name our worksheet revenue. So I'm going to come down here. I've already done it in my worksheet down at the bottom here, but in order to name the tab, you would just double click and type in revenue and hit enter. Okay, Excel always is waiting for us to hit enter to tell it that we're done with an operation. All right, so it says for this problem, suppose a company is able to sell a total of D of P items. So in this case, it's saying the thing inside the parentheses is the input, P, okay? And the output is D of P. D of P, the number of items the company is able to sell. So this is a quantity of items, okay? Then it goes on to tell us that P, or the input, is the price per item in P dollars. Price per item in P dollars. And then it gives us the function for D of P, also called demand. So a lot of times the amount that we're able to sell, or the demand that consumers have, is a function of how we price it. The higher we price it, the fewer items they want. So let's start here, because then it says find the revenue function. So that can be confusing. Revenue, we know, is price times quantity. So what I want you to do is, I know that I'm inputting price, and I can see here that the revenue function also has an input of price. So when I set up my input-output table, I've already done it here. My first column I set up as my input. And because P is price per item, I'm going to start it. I can't have negative price, even though I can put mathematically negative numbers in this demand function, which happens to be a linear function. Contextually, I'm not going to price my items at $. So I'm going to start my price, or my input, at $0, and I'm going to go up from here. This problem intentionally does not tell you how far to go. What it wants you to do is sort of experiment with, how far do I need to price the items? What sort of increment do I need to use? You don't always have to use an increment or a step value of 1. All right, so it's intentionally wanting you to play around with and modify your spreadsheet. All right, so let us put in, because it gives us this D of P function, even though we're not sure if we're going to use it initially, we're going to put it in our first output column, column B, demand, number of items sold, D of P. So I type my function in, I use cell referencing. It's equal to negative 2.59 times P. My P values are in column A, A2 plus 9416. And then I just copy that down through the whole table. Okay, for my table here, I went in increments of 150 and I stopped at 4,050. I actually went further, but then I got rid of some of my rows. All right. And then it says, so find the revenue function. We know that revenue is equal to price per item times quantity sold. Price per item times quantity sold. Well, here's my price per item here in column A, and column B has my items sold. So in Excel, I could just multiply price is in column A times quantity, which is in column B. If I write that out algebraically though, again, price is P, okay? So my revenue function is my price P times my quantity, which happens to be this D of P function. So it's P times that whole demand function, negative 2.59P plus 9416. If I were to expand that out, distribute that P, that gives me, this should be negative, there's the negative sign, negative 2.59P squared plus 9416P. Okay, so that's what they want you to put in this box here. And you can always look at the answer key as well. All right, so price times quantity. Lumen would have accepted either answer if you wrote it out P times D of P or if you distributed the P. All right, and so now I'm going to put that formula here. Actually, like I said, when I put it into Excel, I can just do P times Q. A, column A, which is where my prices are, times column B. All right, so now it says create a table. We've done that for the revenue function in Excel. And it says make sure that your input-output table spans p-values so that you can see two intercepts. So if you did not see two intercepts previously, right, you got to change your input values for price so that you can see both of them. All right, so if I do insert smooth line graph, I can see here that I clearly have, all I graphed was my revenue function. Initially, that's all it's asking me about. My first or my left-hand intercept is at 0, 0. I come up to a peak here, and then I can see another x-intercept over here, somewhere between $3,500 and $4,000. All right, so I've got that. So then what you also want to do is to label, which I've done here, my columns. Okay, I put the real world contextual meaning. It's really important that you include those labels when you set up a spreadsheet because you want somebody else outside of yourself to easily be able to understand what calculations you're doing and the real world contextual meaning. All right, so question D says, find the vertical intercept. The vertical intercept of R of P, of the revenue function. Well, if I look at my table here, I started at price equals 0, and the vertical intercept happens where the input is 0. So my vertical intercept for the revenue function is just 0, 0. Okay. 0, 0. When I input price 0, my revenue happens to be 0. And now if I want to find my horizontal intercepts, those are where my output equals 0. Well, for my first, my left hand intercept, the y and the x-intercept are the same, 0, 0. So for my left intercept, my point is, or my ordered pair, is 0, 0. For my right intercept, again, we can see it happens somewhere between $3,500 and $4,000 per item. So let's look at our table. If I come down to my table here, I can see that somewhere between, right, actually $3,600 and $3,750, I can see that my revenue goes from a positive number to a negative number, meaning it must pass through 0. Okay, between $3,600 and $3,750 per item. So I'm going to pick the revenue that's closer to 0. This happens to be $331,200, and I'm going to use Solver, data, Solver. And what I want to do is I want to take that cell C26 and I want to force it to be equal to a value of 0. That represents my x-intercept. And in this case, I want to put the result here, right, in my input column in the same row, 26, and I'm going to unclick that, and it is going to change this. Okay, it's pretty close to 0. Sometimes when we're in Excel, if I haven't made my inputs close enough to the actual input value that would result in a 0, you get something close, okay? So here I would say when I price my item at $3,635, I have 0 revenue, okay? And that is my horizontal intercept on the right-hand side, 36.3552. You do it to 2 decimal places because that represents a price and that results in about $0 revenue. All right, so that is my second intercept. Let me just highlight that. It wanted me to put those in blue. So if I make that blue and I make that blue. Okay, so now it says find the maximum point of my revenue function, R of P. So when I look at, I can always use my graph to help me out. Right here, I can see it looks like I come up to the maximum point somewhere I don't know, 1,500 to 2,000 something. So I'm going to look at my input output table. Okay. And I can see here, right? My revenues are increasing, right? My revenues are increasing. When I price it at $0, zero revenue. As I'm increasing price, I'm increasing revenue. Increasing, increasing, increasing. Okay, so at $1,800 price per item, I have 8,557,000, and then somewhere between 1,800 and 1,900, my revenue starts to drop. So I can't count on this value here to be the exact maximum. I'm going to use Solver to come up with the maximum. Okay, so I'm going to say data Solver. And now I want to make sure I clear out what I previously had in there. And I want to go up to cell, in my case, C14. And here I want to select, I want to force it to be the maximum. And I want to put the variable, changing variable, I want to find out what the price is. So I want to go back to that input column A. And there I go. So when I charge, let's make that green. When I charge $1,817.76 per item, my revenue, I have a maximum revenue of 8,558,000 and so forth. Okay. And that's what you see down here. All right. So I would round that to 2 decimal places because we're talking about money here.